Hey guys, I just got back from a Saturday night showing of Alien Romulus. I really liked this film. I thought that it was a huge improvement over Prometheus and Alien Covenant. I felt like those were just going down this really esoteric, lofty, philosophical road that no one really wanted. This film was a nostalgia bonanza. Absolute bonanza, but it still did several things that were fresh, unique to itself, and I think it mended the timelines between the Prometheus, where all that was heading, with the original beloved storyline. I really think that this film mended the disconnect between the two, and now the franchise can move forward in a way that's sort of honoring the original timeline, telling side stories within that narrative universe, and we can just forget about David. We can forget about the engineers. We really don't need that. We can just focus on what works. I'm gonna do a spoiler plot breakdown, and then I'm gonna go over a semi-detailed list of my personal pluses for the film and some negatives. There were still a few negatives, but I understand that money is a constraint. You know, with infinite resources, maybe some of these things could have been fixed, but money is finite. So the film opens with a sequence where the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, on some sort of research vessel, they discover and they claim a piece of space debris. It looks like it's some sort of organic calcified cocoon, and within, this is what is so neat, within that cocoon is the original xenomorph from Alien 1. The one that Ellen Ripley had to harpoon and then blow with the engine. It is somehow, like it somehow has created this calcified cocoon around itself that kept it in a state of stasis, like it's still alive to a certain extent. Sorry for the intrusion from editing me. I just realized as I was slicing and dicing up this footage that this new mechanic that aliens can cocoon themselves and survive in space means that there is a potential for a sequel based on the Queen from Aliens, that she cocooned herself and crash landed on some new planet that has never been introduced in the lore, and that she then just started proliferating a new colony. There is the potential for that, and I am just so mind blown. I know that Fede Alvarez is talking about a new Alien versus Predator crossover with the director of Prey, but I think that is the obvious choice for a sequel, to jump forward in the timeline now and follow the cocooned queen taking over a new colonial planet world. I mean, like, it is just so obvious. That is what they have to do. Oh my gosh, because that was one of my thoughts later in the review, that I would have loved to have seen a queen instead of a reverse engineered engineer, which we're going to talk about later. That might not make sense now, but we're going to talk about that later in the plot review or the plot summary. But like, oh my gosh, the Queen, we could literally follow what the hell happened to her now that we know it's canon that she survived being in space and went into stasis. I hope that she isn't captured by the company if they do a sequel based on that idea. I really hope that she just like crashes onto a colonized planet and just starts creating chaos from there in a natural and organic way. That would be so amazing. So much nostalgia too. Like, the Queen for me has always been my favorite creature ever in sci-fi and horror. I just love her. So she could come back. Okay, sorry, that was a longer excursion than I was hoping for. Now back to the plot summary. We then switch to the perspective of our new protagonist. Her name is Rain, and her parents are dead, and she is stuck basically as an indentured labor slave on one of the Weyland-Yutani mining planets. So there are these systems where you're basically an indentured servant until you hit a certain number of work hours. So she has accumulated 12,000 hours. That's supposed to give her like a pass to be able to travel to another planet of her choosing. But the way that Weyland-Yutani, you know that they're punk ass bitches. So they just arbitrarily raise the requirement. They're like, oh, That's so cute. You have 12,000 work credit hours. Well, actually now you need 24,000 to leave the planet. It is so obvious that there are no worker protections in this future vision of the world. It is just horrible. She has a synth named Andy who was sort of reprogrammed by her father before he died to be her best friend, basically her brother. His primary objective is to protect her and to make sure that she's safe. And he's, kind of simple. He's definitely not a super advanced model like Ash or David or Bishop, but he has a really good heart as far as synthetics go. She's kind of bummed though because she realizes that the chances are kind of high she'll probably be dead before she even hits 24,000 hours because the mines are so dangerous on a lot of these planets. So she's a little bit caught up in her feelings, depressed and hopeless, but then she gets a call from her ex-boyfriend. Tyler has this plan because he, using some sort of space scanner, found the abandoned research facility that found the original xenomorph. They have some sort of ship, but they don't have a way to keep themselves alive for the 9-year trip that it would take to get to their collective dream planet. There's this planet that actually has a sun, because where they are, there's no sunlight at all. And so they want to go to this planet where they, 1, will not be work slaves, 2, there are still work opportunities, and 3, there's sunlight. It's gonna be lovely. But they need cryosleep pods. Since that facility floating in the atmosphere of the planet that they're on is abandoned, they figure that they need to steal the cryopods from that facility, and then they can just sleep on their own ship and get to their dream planet. So the other members of this ragtag team of primarily British accent folks is Tyler, the ex-boyfriend. He has a British accent. So Tyler has a sister named Kay who's pregnant. I actually don't remember her having an English accent. I maybe she did. I don't remember it that way, but whatever. His cousin Bjorn, who does have an English accent, and then Bjorn's girlfriend Navarro. Although if you've seen the commercials, then Navarro, she's the Asian lady with the shaved head. So Tyler and that group of people, they approached Rain because they actually need Andy, because Andy is a reprogrammed Weyland-Yutani synthetic. He'll be able to get them through certain access point doors. The only catch though is they plan on leaving Andy at the ship, decommissioning him and leaving him there because the planet that they're going to has a ban, an outlaw on synthetic humans, and so he can't come. But anyway, they convince Rain that this is the right thing to do to get her fresh start in life, and to that, that Andy would be okay with it anyway because he's just a synth. It's his programming for her to thrive. I did a bad job explaining this in my original video, so let me try again. When they, as a collective, dock their mini ship to the research facility, they split into 2 teams. The women stay on the mini ship. The men, so Andy, Tyler, Bjorn, go on to the research facility. Andy is opening doors because he's a Weyland-Yutani synth, and they find 5 cryopods, which is the exact number that they need. However, these cryopods only have enough fuel for a 3-year journey. They need cryo fuel that can last them over 9 years. And so in the meantime, what they do is they eject the cryopods. Navarro is piloting their mini ship. She undocked and then moved over to where the cryopods are, ejecting, and basically scooped them up into their cargo bay on their mini ship because they're going to travel on the mini ship, so that's where they need the cryopods. Now, the guys are using a device that tells them where more cryofuel is. So they move deeper into the facility while Navarro moves their mini ship to a docking facility that's closer to where the guys are going. They find a genetics lab that has a cryo storage facility, and so when they pull out a full cryo fuel cell, it initiates a lockdown. Andy no longer has the security clearance to leave the room because of the lockdown crisis, whatever. And so the guys are stuck in a room, and so the ladies have to leave the ship now and try to find where the guys are and see if they can figure a way to unlock the door and let them out of the cryo storage room. Unbeknownst to anyone at this time, there are face huggers in cryo storage. They're in these frozen plastic bags, and because of the lockdown, the room is actually rapidly heating up. The cryo stuff is no longer working because everything's shut down. And so the face huggers are rapidly defrosting. That's where we are, and now let's carry on. Andy doesn't have the clearance to open the doors anymore, and so they find a destroyed synth, and they take out like a piece of his, processor or whatever, and they're able to put it into Andy. There's a little crack in the door, and so they're able to pass this chip through, and then the guys, Tyler and Bjorn, are able to install it into Andy. It works, and Tyler and Bjorn are saved from the facehuggers that are now awake and looking for hosts to implant embryos into. However, in the chaos of the escape, when the doors are opened, Navarro does get infected, but then they're able to seal additional doors, and they're good for the moment. But Andy starts to almost like evolve, because the extra chip now in his processing unit, it starts to override his original programming. It like upgrades his processing capabilities and starts to give him a new directive to work for the company instead of prioritizing preservation of Rain's life. Rain activates the damaged synthetic that they found when they first got to the lab, and it turns out to be another unit of Ash, except this one is named Rook, going, I guess, with the chess naming scheme, because there was Bishop, now there's Rook. I guess that means in the sequel there's going to be a synth named Queen. That would be kind of funny. Okay, but anyway, these new facehuggers, they work fast. These new embryos are quick. Navarro almost instantly starts to succumb. She made a break for it with Bjorn and the pregnant lady, because Andy, in his new reprogrammed state, was going to take her out to reduce the risk to the rest of the crew or whatever. I'm just not telling this well. Okay, but Andy is not able to take Navarro out in time, so she actually her chest burster starts coming out right then and there, while they were starting to pilot the ship. And so their little ship then crashes into another bay on another side of this facility, but all this chaos caused the whole facility to start falling out of orbit. And so the planet that they're above has this debris ring around it, and so the facility is going to start sinking into the debris ring, which is going to destroy it. So they have a very limited time frame now to get the hell out of there. This is when we get some cool scenes. So we actually get to see the next step in the molting process of a xenomorph. So Kay, the pregnant lady, she wakes up after losing consciousness on the ship that crashed into another bay. She finds the little baby skin, like remember the original Alien movie, but then she actually sees this chrysalis thing that looks like it has a vagina on it. Sorry. It just, that's Giger for you. But that is how the little baby started to rapidly evolve into a full-grown xenomorph. It sort of cocooned itself into its own womb. Bjorn tries to kill the evolving xenomorph, but fails. He uses some sort of electric device. He jams it into the opening. So it literally looks like he's shoving a cattle prod into a vagina. But he does make contact with the alien, but there's just not enough electricity. It does not get the job done, and I forgot exactly what happened. I think he might have gotten poked by the tail. I can't really remember, but then basically what happened was he fell underneath the opening, but so where he had broken the xenomorph's skin, acid started oozing out of the cocoon's little slit and spilling all over him. And you know that acid blood is just insane, and so it just goes right through him. But Kay is stuck in the ship because there's some sort of issue. She can't find a key to get out or something like that. But while she is fumbling and struggling, the other people, so the people that were left behind, Rain, Tyler, and Andy, they are trying to get to where the ship crashed into another bay. And to get there, they have to go through a room full of facehuggers. But then Andy theorizes that they hunt through thermal sensing temperature and by sound, since they don't have eyes. So they're able to raise the room or raise the temperature of the ship to 98.6 degrees. And it makes them visually invisible to the facehuggers, but they still have to be very quiet. I got really pissed in this scene because Tyler, he has a little headset on and he basically takes a call from Kay. I know she would have died if he had just muted it or whatever, but they're in a hallway full of facehuggers and he's just like, yeah, Kay, what are you saying, Kay? Oh, you can't get out. There's a key. You need to find the key. She's like screaming, and so you can hear her screaming on the other end of the little headset, and the facehuggers are like looking around like, what the fuck? And it's just so like come on, man, come on. Naturally, the facehuggers are like, oh my god, this man is having a full ass conversation in front of all of us. Let's get his ass. And so there's a chase sequence. They're able to narrowly escape or whatever, and they get to another lab where the Andy was taking them to, because right now he's focused on the Weyland-Yutani directive, and so he goes to the Romulus lab or whatever, where they had been extracting the black goo from Prometheus and Covenant from some of the specimens that they had harvested and recreated from the original xenomorph. I don't really get how they made so many facehuggers without a queen, but I'm guessing they must have just taken some DNA samples or something from the recovered xenomorph and the original one and started, I don't know, just cloning it or whatever, reverse engineering its life cycle. I don't know. But regardless, they have a bunch of facehuggers that they hooked up to these syringes, and so they literally just extracted a big vat of the goo out of them. Rook, or Ash, explains that now the purpose of this black goo is not necessarily for bioweapons or whatever. It's basically to create more resilient, cheap labor. So basically, it's very expensive to terraform a planet. Planets can still be hostile and toxic, not have the right temperature for people to survive or whatever. So they want to start injecting this black goo into humans to make them as resilient as the xenomorph so that they can work in more hostile planetary conditions without the company having to invest in making the planets safe and livable for standard humans. It's just insane. But at the same time, I can kind of see this being a more believable profit incentive for studying the xenomorphs than the original bioweapon motivation. I could see both, but I just thought that was so crazy and so evil, but at the same time it feels so real world. How can we change the entire human race so that we can get even cheaper labor? Okay, so all of this is coming to a crescendo. They go through the hive in the ship because there are a bunch of other xenomorphs that had created a hive near an elevator that can take all of them back to the new cargo bay where their ship is. And so they're going through. Tyler dies during this process. Rain was given one of the Colonial Marines pulse rifles, but they're really afraid to use it because I don't know, they're in the basement of the ship basically, and so if any of the blood spills, then it'll just eat right through the hole and cause a decompression event. Anyway, Rain gives the vials of the black goo, the improved black goo, to Kay, the pregnant lady who survived getting stabbed earlier by the adult xenomorph that her cousin Bjorn tried to electrocute. But she was going to get implanted with an embryo later on if she survived all of the bleeding or whatever. But anyway, they pull her off a wall and she's part of the group now. Let's see, they did that first and then Tyler died. But then, like I was saying, then Rain gives all of the vials of the goo to Kay, shoves her on the elevator and says, if I'm not there in 10 minutes, basically, get the hell out of here on your own. I mean, these vials are worth probably hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars, to Weyland-Yutani. So like, you're gonna survive if you have this. You need this. However, she did overhear Rook talking about how it has some sort of mutagenic, viral body modification properties. Like Andy, while he was under the spell, was ready to inject her on the spot when they scraped her off the wall. But Rain was like, oh my God, like, no, we don't know. Like, this hasn't been tested on humans. Like, what the hell are you doing? But Kay, when she's on the elevator by herself, just pops it right in her neck. You know, this hasn't been FDA tested, FDA approved. I mean, just boop. Like, I get that she was in a desperate situation. There was a lot of heavy bleeding, and so maybe that was the desperation, like, I have to do this, or like if I die, my baby dies. But I just cannot imagine, like, hearing this solution basically transforms you on a genetic cellular level, and her being like, oh yeah, I am with child, but boop, like, it hasn't been FDA tested, you dumb bitch. Oh my God. Anyway, Rain left the elevator with Kay on it. She needed to go back to get Andy because he got damaged or incapacitated. She finally knocks that chip upgrade out of his head, and so he returns to being the lovable Andy that she grew up with. And there's a really cool sequence where they're like waiting for the elevator, and so they turn off the gravity, and that way the acidic blood won't fall to the floor if she shoots the aliens. She has auto aim on, and so she just mows a bunch of them down. But then there's literally just the acidic blood flying everywhere. That was the tensest scene for me, like, of sustained tension, because she has to float through it without touching it because it'll just destroy any tissue that it touches. Anyway, they're floating up the elevator, but then the gravity gets disabled, so Rain is falling to her death. But then the xenomorph that got hit with the cattle prod earlier catches her with its tail and is ready to take her out. But then I can't remember exactly how it happened. I think that it let her go because I think that the gravity turned back on, and Andy disabled the elevator and sent it crashing down, because there were like dozens of other xenomorphs crawling up in the 0G or whatever. But then when the gravity came on, or they were crawling up the walls, but then when the gravity came on, the elevator came down, smushed most of them like a pancake down at the bottom, and blocked any more from being able to come back up. But the one that got cattle prodded was very clever, got out of the way. But then when it was ready to take Rain out, that's when Andy came down and used the last of the pulse rifle rounds to take it out. And he repeated Ellen Ripley's iconic line, "Get away from her, you bitch." I mean, that was worth a good chuckle, because I was just like, I cannot believe that they did this. It just really came out of nowhere. I think that it would have been fine if they had left the line, "Get away from her." There was just no build up to it. I was like, why is Andy suddenly cursing? He's like so lovable. At his baseline, he has sort of the emotional intelligence of like a really friendly child. For him to just out of nowhere be like, "You bitch," took me out. I'm not mad though. I still put that on my positives list, but let's keep going, because this just kept getting crazier. So they think that it's a happy ending and that they can all just get in their pods and keep going on. But remember, Kay injected herself with the non-FDA tested or approved black goo shit. Well, she finds out that her pregnancy has now hyper advanced, and she gives birth to a xenomorph pod that then pops out a little fetus type thing. It's like a human xenomorph hybrid that actually looks like a reverse engineered engineer, if you remember from Prometheus and Covenant. It's very, very uncanny valley vibes, 1000%, very bizarre, and also very reminiscent of the hybrid creature from Alien Resurrection. But it reaches its mature form in like 2 minutes flat and kills Kay. So her whole, the whole save the pregnant lady arc was just for nothing. And Rain is able to bring it into the cargo bay of the little ship that they're on and trick it, because remember what I said about the debris rings? So they were able to get off the lab just in time before that slammed into the debris rings, but now their ship, because Andy was incapacitated by the human xenomorph baby hybrid, their ship is starting to dip towards the rings too. Rain is able, though, to detach the whole cargo bay, and she's tethered to the ship still in a spacesuit, so she's able to survive this process. And the human hybrid thing, it tries to like grab onto her, but she's able to shake it off, and it dies in the debris field, seemingly. And then she pulls her way back up into the ship, which is now en route to the dream planet. And she, when she gets there, she puts I almost said David. She puts Andy into his own cryogenic pod and commits to him that if they make it to this planet after all this trouble, that she promises she's going to repair him, and they're going to find a way to make it work, even though synths are banned on this planet. But it's going to take them 9 years to get there, so who knows? Maybe the legislation will change by then, or she'll just have to find a way to sneak him in. But she's the lone survivor, and she signs off with a little audio log, just like Ellen Ripley in Alien 1 and in Aliens, and that's that. Thankfully, even though she's the only survivor, the sole survivor, and has undergone incredible trauma, there's still no terrible, horrible shit going on at the end, like David crawling out of a locker and being like, ha ha ha, more test subjects for the black goo. Like, she legitimately is going to make it to this new life and have a start to her new life. And so, I mean, at least it ends on that. Okay, but now I have my list of pluses and minuses. Let me go a little rapid fire through this. So I loved that this story was based around Weyland-Yutani finding the original xenomorph from Alien 1. I thought that was so cool, and it was so neat how that alien was able to adapt in space to survive in stasis. I thought that the environmental visuals in this film were so amazing. Everything looked amazing. The VFX, especially for like the planets and the debris ring and a lot of the lighting. I mean, just everything visually was just top tier. I love this style for this franchise so much more than what Prometheus and Alien Covenant were doing, with like very muted gray, greenish blue forests and deserts and stuff like that. Like that whole color palette even just does not work for me for this franchise. I mean, the industrial grime to everything was so perfect. I also thought that most of the other types of CGI worked too, with one big exception, which we'll talk about. One thing that I liked narratively, they gave just enough foundation, because there's this sequence showing Rain, how horrible her life is, and the struggle and the bullshit of when she's applying for her visa to be free, and they're like, oh, we actually doubled your work quota. Sorry, bitch. Like, it laid just enough to understand why she would be willing to risk it all for a crazy mission like this. I mean, even without the aliens, it was kind of a dangerous and crazy and risky endeavor. And they did a good job, because it wasn't too long. It was just enough. Because some films, they're moving a little bit too fast, and you're like, I literally have no idea why she would risk being imprisoned potentially for the rest of her life to even endeavor on this. This, though, the setup was just right. I loved all of the nostalgia, and I'm gonna run down the list real quick of just some things that I noticed. So they went back to the analog tech, analog screens, lots of chunky buttons, lots of padding like on the doors and in the hallways and that sort of stuff. The hexagonal hallway shape and door shape, I just loved all of that. They had the bird dipper that showed up, that was in Alien 1 and in the Alien Isolation video game. That made a cameo. I just love that this felt like the dirty, evil Weyland-Yutani from the original run of films versus like the new in Prometheus and in Alien Covenant, the whole like Weyland company and then Weyland-Yutani. It just didn't feel the same. You know what I mean? I thought that the callback to "you bitch," I thought that was really funny. I loved the music and the sound design, the set design. It was all just perfectly reminiscent of Alien and Aliens, particularly Alien. Another thing that was very reminiscent of Alien. In a lot of scenes, like in cargo areas, there were a lot of like hanging chains and stuff, and a lot of dripping water. If you've seen Alien recently, then you know like those are staples of the original set design. A lot of elevators too, which was reminiscent of some of the iconic scenes from Aliens. Sort of putting nostalgia to the side. Another thing that I loved about this film is I feel like it bridged the gap between the original narrative timeline and the Prometheus timeline. It made it so that it feels like the timelines are more compatible now. Because one thing that I really hated about Prometheus and Alien Covenant is that they were a prequel to the original quadrilogy. And that's where it got like way too like esoteric, and you know, the role of man aspiring to become a god or whatever, and the David android synth. I mean, I checked out. I was like, I don't care. This is not what the series is about for me. About, you know, Michael Fassbender giving this like esoteric performance, trying to reflect the folly of man's hubris through a performance as a synth with an ego complex, a god complex. Like it took me so far away from what I enjoyed about the original, the simplicity of it and a lot of the mystery of it, because I think you know what I'm saying, so I'm going to stop there because I do want to talk about the goo a little bit more in the negative section. I'm just still not a fan of the goo, but we'll get there. I'm still in the positives. I thought that the anti-gravity was amazing, so innovative, and just so cool visually, especially with the floating blood scene. I mean, that was just peak tension for me. I loved seeing the extra step of the molting process, the chest burster's evolution into the adult, having its sort of like vagina cocoon. And you know what that was sort of reminiscent of is in the original Alien, in the director's cut, they were actually showing a scene, or there was actually a scene where Ellen Ripley saw the rest of her crewmates had been captured and stuck to the walls, and they were actually being transformed into xenomorphs, and so she had to take them out. That was a deleted scene that did not make it into the theatrical cut. Even though this cocoon was not about a human being transformed into a xenomorph, it was still like high up on a wall, and some of the design of the organic elements was similar. I do think that was an homage from the director of this film, Fede Alvarez, to Ridley Scott and his original concept of having humans transform into xenomorphs in little cocoon structures on the wall. I think that even though they're very different, I think that just there was an homage there. And last on my positive points, I'm sure that I could come up with more if I had more time, but I'm trying to like rush this. The reverse engineered engineer I thought was freaky as hell. And, you know, even though, like, I don't necessarily know if I would have gone that route, the end design was very, very unsettling and well done. Okay, so a few negatives. These are just personal to me. You know, these are not universal. But the first one that I have to mention is the Ash CGI was just janky trash. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it was so cool. The idea was so cool. Having a different model of Ash, you know, the Rook character, as a synth android that was sort of like a secondary villain, secondary overarching villain. Like, that was so cool. And having the I'm guessing they used AI to replicate the original actor's voice, because the voice was spot on. But the actual implementation of the CGI onto the face, like something went wrong. this is where I don't know if it was just a budget thing, like maybe, or I don't know, maybe it's just too difficult to do something like that. I don't know. Like, they did a pretty good job making young Leia in Star Wars, but then again, maybe the issue with implementing this sort of technology is like having enough available material to reconstruct a face in 3D. I don't know what the issue was, but something went wrong there. If the budget just didn't have enough to like spread evenly across the board, then this was definitely the one area that got sacrificed so that everything else could look amazing. You know what I mean? Like maybe the budget was $80 million. Maybe this needed like a whole other $1 million in the budget or something, but that just wasn't possible because Ash's face, it did not hit. Honestly, if this film does extremely well, like if this overperforms, then I hope that they fix the CGI on the face or further improve it before like Blu-ray and digital home video release, because I've seen where some studios have done that. Like if they had to release a film with janky CGI, that they've fixed it before the DVDs go out. So there's still hope, but holy crap, it was distractingly bad. Another negative that I have is, again, this is just obligatory for any story. A character has to be stupid at some point, or else it's like we're not even gonna have a story. If everyone's rational, then how do you even make a horror movie? But the K girl, the pregnant girl, injecting herself with a strange, literally pitch black, mutagenic fluid while pregnant, I was like, girl, bye. Like literally, it is ridiculous that you have been allowed to make it this far into the film, and then that's the joke. You know, she's made it this far just to take herself out. Girl, like, get a grip. It's not FDA tested. It's not FDA approved. You're ridiculous. The same thing happened with the headset scene that I was telling you about in the spoiler plot review section. It's like literally sometimes the only way to progress tension or like to get chaos back in the mix is literally for characters to do dumb things. Sometimes that is the only way. I wish it wasn't, but I guess in the writing room, sometimes like characters just have to, you know what I'm saying. Moving on. I'm still not a fan of the black goo. I don't know what it is about the black goo, but something about it just really takes away. For me, the black goo diminishes the xenomorphs on a certain level. I really don't like the idea of them being this like bioengineered race that was created by an engineer society using a mutagenic black goo. I really like the idea that like the xenomorph just came into being as a result of like millions or billions of years of evolution on some sort of exotic planet, and they just became so hardy and so durable that they were able to proliferate and spread to other societies, other planets. Like maybe their homeworld blew up and they were able to survive that process and crash land on other planets. Like I have always liked the idea of the xenomorph coming just in a natural way, in a natural environment, but being so refined from billions of years of evolving into the perfect organism that like that's just how they came about. I really do not like the idea of the xenomorph being a purposefully created bioweapon. Not a fan. And I know for some people, they either don't mind that or they really like that. But obviously not enough people, or else we would have gotten a sequel to Alien Covenant. Just saying. So I feel like this film had a tough job, you know, trying to course correct, but I do respect that they didn't just try to retcon the black goo. I like that, you know, they did the best that they could to still respect what Ridley Scott was going for with the Prometheus and Covenant storyline. So in that sense, I really don't blame Fede Alvarez, because I think that that's a very respectful thing to do to make it work. I actually had that as one of my positive points, that he was able to bridge the two worlds together in a way that was respectful to both. But I just personally wish that, I hope that after this film, we can just phase out the black goo altogether. Because this girl, you know, she's taking the last of the black goo with her to some planet. She'll probably just keep it as an insurance policy of some sort. But hopefully the black goo will die with her while she gets her happy ending. And hopefully, like, she'll just destroy it when she gets old as hell. And that'll be that with the black goo. And we can just focus back on more grounded, mysterious xenomorph stories moving forward. That's what I hope for the franchise. Another negative that I had, this might be a little bit petty, but I felt like the cast might have been a little bit too young. Maybe I'm showing that I'm just becoming a grumpy old as hell person. I feel like stories like this really thrive with people that are at least in their 30s. Now, oh God, what if they are in their 30s? Then that'll just make me feel like I'm aging horribly. No, the Tyler guy is 26. Let me look up Rain. Rain is 20, or the actress that played Rain is 26. The pregnant K lady character, 23. Okay, so I'm not wrong. How old is the Bjorn actor? Oh, he's young. He was born in 2001. Oh, so that would make him 23 also. Okay, so these are young people. The core cast was between 23 and 26 years old. Like, and you know that's usually the age group that in series, like TV shows and stuff, they're usually portraying teenagers on Netflix and stuff like that these days. So I think that there's just like this skewed perception now where it's like, I feel like I'm watching teenagers, and it's given me CW energy at times. That's not their fault. I think that everyone did a really fantastic job with the performances. I don't know, that distracted me a little bit because I don't know. I'm at an age where I'm older than all of these people. So it was just kind of strange to me because for me, Alien, it's still a series where, I don't know, like mentally in my head, I just have the core cast being in their 30s, regardless of what the era is. That's just a petty me problem though. One thing, I thought that there was a missed opportunity with the Andy transformation. So I don't know if this is just like the actor's main like primary expression or whatever, but like when he was playing Andy in his simplified existence before he got the processor upgrade, he sort of like has like a furrowed brow, and like one brow is like raised a little bit higher than the other, and his like mouth is always like really like innocent and like uncertain. And he keeps some of this facial expression language even after he's upgraded. So even though he starts to become more clinical, cold, and sinister, calculated, and his devotion has switched temporarily to Weyland-Yutani, he keeps some of these like the furrowed raised brow and just like the uncertain lip body language. I really think that it would have been cool to see as his programming is like slowly rewritten and his priorities are updated and he becomes more cold and clinical, if that innocent, uncertain facial body language were to subside and his face were to become stone cold. Like relaxed eyebrows, relaxed eyelids, relaxed mouth, to reflect that he's becoming cold, clinical, calculated, that he's losing that innocence, he's losing that protective personality, he's losing that naivete. I think that would have, like, just on an acting choice, a direction level, that's what I would have wanted to see in the performance, but they chose not to go that route. At the same time, though, that would have made the changes within him more obvious externally, so maybe they didn't want that to, like, maybe they thought that was like too on the nose or whatever. But I still think that would have been a neat parallel to see, and it would have given the actor more to work with. I had this in the negative. I thought that the reverse engineered engineer felt a little too much like the sequence from Resurrection where Ripley sort of adopts the human xenomorph hybrid baby. I don't know. That's just a petty me thing. I had this in the negative because I'm a petty diva. I would have loved to have seen a queen. Maybe if this film does well enough, then the sequel will finally bring back the queen, the ultimate space diva. But I don't know if it was out of the budget or if they thought that maybe their big chaotic end sequence had to be the reverse engineered engineer to close the loop on the Prometheus stuff, pay homage to that. Maybe they thought that it would be too on the nose with all this nostalgia, even mentioning the whole get away from her, you bitch. Maybe they thought it would be too much to have a queen. I don't know. I still would have loved to have seen a queen somewhere, even if it was just on a camera and everyone's like, what the fuck is that? And Rook/Ash reveals that, they were able to bioengineer a queen and that was the supply of the facehuggers. But she's in a whole other wing, so we'll never have to deal with her. But just seeing her on the camera, that would have been so cool. But hopefully in the sequel, she will make her return. I was sort of talking about this in my plot breakdown. I was literally laughing when I was talking about it, but the new evil motivation for Weyland-Yutani to be exploring the xenomorph and the profit-oriented potential of the xenomorph, I just felt it was a little goofy, because now instead of bioweapons, Rook was saying that they were just all in on the potential of extracting this black goo to make more resilient, cheap labor workers so that they don't have to terraform planets and shit anymore. They can just create workers that could survive anything and then just deploy them to planets to mine and harvest resources on the cheap. Because they wouldn't even have to bring oxygen generators or whatever. These people could just survive in any toxic environment. And so, they wouldn't even need AC or heat. Literally a death cold planet that's full of platinum and gold and diamonds or whatever. Just dump a bunch of mutated black goo xenomorph human hybrids onto the planet and they'll be able to work at minimum wage without any accommodations. It's just a little bit goofy and a little bit, in some ways, it's actually more realistic than just the bioweapon focus, but in other ways, it is so ridiculous that it's almost silly, but I don't know. Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. I actually do think in some ways this is a more realistic evil motivation than the bioweapons, but I don't know. Maybe we are headed in this direction where the objective is just modify and boost the resilience and the durability of the human body and the human experience at any cost, at any risk. Maybe that's where we're headed. And maybe some of those motivations will be cheaper labor. I mean, that's a scary reality to think about. Maybe it's not that silly after all. Maybe it is a reflection of the new ethos of where this is all headed. Anyway, that's all I've got tonight. My voice is starting to cave out after all that screaming from earlier. So I gotta go do some throat coat tea. That stuff is the best. But I really loved this movie. I know that I can be a little bit nitpicky with some of my negatives, but in the grand overarching scheme of this film and the franchise, those nitpicks were so small, so insignificant. I really do want to end on that positive note. I think that this is the best film in the series since Aliens. If I had to rank, I would say Aliens, Alien 1, and then Alien Romulus, and then we could have a little bit of a battle for what would take the fourth spot, because everything just fell off so hard after Aliens. But that's why this deserves that solid number 3 spot in the franchise for me. And I'm really excited to see where the franchise goes next. I feel like this has returned enthusiasm to the franchise and has opened a whole new world of possibilities and has closed some of the loops that were left by Prometheus and Covenant. I think that we can feel comfortable after this knowing they have integrated the black goo into the into the new storyline, so that respected what Ridley had intended to do, but we can safely let Michael Fassbender, like, detach him, declip him from the franchise, detether him, let him float off and do other things. David, that storyline can die, and we never have to complete his God Complex journey. Let's just focus on more grounded, in-universe stories like this. That is my hope for the future of the Alien franchise, and this was the perfect way to start getting us there. Let me know in the comments what I should watch or review or whatever. I'm trying out different things, and yeah, we'll see what happens. I also do have a music-oriented reaction channel. I tend to have more poppin' over there, more stuff going on, more conversations to be had. I'm almost at 24K over there, so if you're wanting to see a more like joyful, positive vibe, then that's where you can find me. I'll link it in the description. It's called Chris's Corner. But I gotta go. Time to go rest and recover this voice. Have a great day. Bye.